Welcome back. I'm Mike Damasi, and welcome to my channel, Vinyasa Yoga Montreal. I wanted to do another presentation, just briefly covering the biography of the professor Sri Tirumalai Krishnamacharya. As my very first video that I had published on this channel was quite long, and it was also getting into rebuttal towards the Western academic community. And the second video was much shorter, but more so covering the various approaches according to the different lineage branches in this broad lineage tradition of Sri T. Krishnamacharya. And so I'd like to endeavor to try to cover in a reasonable length of time the broad biography of Sri Tirumalai Krishnamacharya. So I'll start with the invocation to honoring actually Krishnamacharya himself, principally through honoring his own teachers. So I'll go ahead and chant this. Om Shri Krishna Vagishayatishwarabhyam Samprapta Chakrankana Bhashyasaram Shri Nutnarangendra Yatau Samarpitasvam Shri Krishna Mariam Guru Varyamide Virodhe Kartike Mase Shatatara Kritodayam Yogacharyan Krishna Mariam Guru Varyamaham Bhaje Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Om. All right. Thanks again for joining. I'll share screen now with this document that I had prepared. So the following presentation is on the life and teachings of the renowned Yogacharya, Sri Tirumalai Krishnamacharya. To start off with, I will draw the attention of those who may not know of him to probably what is the most popular form of yoga today, the infamous Vinyasa style. This style of class is a dynamic approach of moving postures, which derives from the Indian export of what was referred to as Ashtanga Vinyasa by an Indian teacher named Patabi Jois, a student of the 20th century yoga teacher Sri T. Krishnamacharya, who taught a traditional form of Vinyasa Krama, a system of breath-centered movement. The professor Krishnamacharya was also the teacher of another well-known Indian teacher who disseminated a methodology of practicing the postures, B.K.S. Iyengar. Other important students of the professors who later taught yoga were Indra Devi, the professor's own children, most notably, of course, in his middle son, TKV Deshikachar, and others like Srivatsa Ramaswamy and A.G. Mohan. So the professor Krishnamacharya was born in 1888 in South India, in the state of Karnataka. He was initiated into the Vedas and yoga studies by his father, but his teaching cut short after 4 years of study when his father died. Krishnamacharya furthered his formal studies at the renowned Mysore Parakala Mutt, pictured here, where his family was traditionally associated with studies. So this is actually Krishnamacharya's great-grandfather, who was the head of the Parakala Mutt, Shri Lakshmi Hayavadana Divya Paduka Sevaka Shri Srinivasa Brahmatantra Swatantra Parakala Swami. So you can see the period that he was head of the institution, the philosophical institution in Mysore, was between 1836 1861 in Common Era. So it's quite a while ago. He was reading from here this document provided by the Mysore Parakala Mutt institution. He was born in the lineage of the great Tirukurukai Pilan in the Shaka year 1713. That's 1790 in Common Era, with the name Krishnamacharya. So his Tirumalai Krishnamacharya's great grandfather had the same name. Upon the instruction of Sri Gantavatara Swami, he obtained initiation into sannyasa ashrama from Vedanta Brahmatantra Swatantra Swami in the year 1836 Common Era. In the same year, he ascended the Sri Pitam, performed Ubhaya Vedanta Pravachanam at Tirunarayanapuram and Mahisurapuram for many years. He taught the Gita Bhashya and Bhagavad Vishayam to Sri Mumadi Krishnaraja Wadayar. So this is actually the Maharaja of Mysore from that period of time. Incidentally, the Maharaja of Mysore that would compile a text called the Sri Tattva Nidhi, published mid-19th century, which had a section on yogasanas, compiling from various yoga shastras, with remarkable asana procedures, dynamic, rigorous procedures there. In any case, it's just interesting to see that Krishnamacharya's family had links to the royal family in Mysore for quite some time. So Krishnamacharya's great grandfather advised the Maharaja of the mid-19th century. In any case, continuing here, undertook a victorious tour all over the country, establishing the doctrine of Ramanuja. This is well recorded in the work Parakala Guru Vijaya Champu. This year completed 26 Chaturmasya Sankalpam. So his family tradition follows the philosophical branch of Vedanta taught by Ramanujacharya. And then some of the other preceptors of a young Krishnamacharya while he was studying at this institution, the Mysore Parakala Mutt, include Sri Krishna Brahmatantra Swatantra Parakala Swami. So from him, let's read the short bio here. In any case, he was appointed head pontiff of the Mysore Parakala Mutt between 1885 and until 1914. He was born in the Shaka year 1762, that's 1839 Common Era. By the grace of Sri Srinivasa Brahmatantra Swatantra Swami. Therefore, this child was given the Purva Ashrama name of Srinivasa Brahmatantra Swatantra Swami Krishnamacharya. So I'm not certain on the history, but it sounds like this is Krishnamacharya's grandfather, who was teaching at this institute. The son of Sri Srinivasa Brahmatantra Swatantra Parakala Swami, whose given name initially was Krishnamacharya himself. You see, they take on a new name when they take on this role this leadership role at this institute. So he ascended the Mahapitam in the year 1885, Common Era. To the Matam, he brought along with him the Archa Vigraha of Lakshmi Narayana, which was being worshipped in his familial lineage. Of course, Krishnamacharya's family tradition hails from the tradition of the 9th century Vaishnavite saint Natamuni. So that's indicated here. Natamuni's grandchild, Sri Yamunacharya, who authored a short commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, was the preceptor to Sri Ramanujacharya. In any case, going back here, so in terms of Sri Krishna Brahmatantra Parakala Swami, he has composed 67 Sri Grantams, the Parakala Guru Vijaya Champu describing the life of the 28th GR is a work that this Swami composed in his Purvashramam. The achievements of this GR are too numerous to be recounted within the scope of the current work. Mata Shri Maharani Vani Vilasam Ammani, that is the wife of Chamaranjendra Wodayar, received Bharanyasam at the feet of this GR, this teacher. Her son, Sri Krishna Raja Wadyar the fourth, received Vaishnava Diksha and Pancha Samskara from this GR. So the fourth, Sri Krishna Raja Wadayar, is the one that was to then employ Krishnamacharya in the 1930s as the Yogacharya at the Jaganmohan Palace in Mysore. A prestigious position, I may add, but I don't want to jump ahead in the chronology of the facts. Just to say that the Maharajas of Mysore had connection to this institute, the Mysore Parakala Mutt, and the head pontiffs over the generations. Her son, Sri Krishna Raja, so I read that. This GR completed 30 Chaturmasya Sankalpams. So, and then there's this one. First of all, what did Krishnamacharya learn from Sri Krishna Brahmatantra Parakala Swami? If we examine this initial chant that I recited earlier, Sri Krishna, referring Sri Krishna Brahmatantra Parakala Swami, he was the head pontiff of Sri Brahmatantra Parakala Mutt in Mysore from 1877 until his death in 1912 rather. I'm not sure if the dates correspond here as according to what's given in the other document, but it is clearly speaking to this individual. And from him, a young Krishnamacharya was taught mantra and initiated into Chakrankanam, the ritual of prostrating and receiving Shanka right side and Chakra left side on the shoulders. These are traditional ritual procedures using Nyasa. Now, this other preceptor of young Krishnamacharyas, Sri Vagisha Brahmatantra Swatantra Parakala Swami, as you can see in this invocation, it starts Sri Krishna and then Vagisha. So it's referring Sri Vagisha Brahmatantra Parakal Swami. Here the facts of this pontiff are not translated here, but he was the head of the Mysore Parakala Mutt from 1914 until 1925. Incidentally, on this document from Paul Harvey's website, it indicates 1912 to 1925, so the dates aren't corresponding. What did a young Krishnamacharya learn from Sri Vagisha Brahmatantra Parakal Swami? Sri Vagisha, who taught him the essence of Sri Bhashyam, that's the Vedanta, and then we see so the commentary on Vedanta. So now the next one, Sri Abhinava Ranganatha Brahmatantra Swatantra Parakala Swami. So he was pontiff from 1925 until his death in 1967. There's written quite a bit about him, so I won't go through it in great detail, but it does explain he's coming from the lineage of Ramanuja, of course, the same lineage that Krishnamacharya himself was coming from. And yeah, so if we see what did Krishnamacharya learn from Sri Ranganatha Brahmatantra Parakala Swami, it indicates Sri Ranganatha, otherwise known as Rangendra, who initiated him into Bharanyasam, to place at the Lord's feet, or how to surrender to God, again, type of ritual procedures. Born in the year Virodha, so now this is referring Krishnamacharya, Virodha refers 1888, during the month of Kritika, so that's referring November, and under the star Shatatara, this teacher of yoga, Guru Krishnamacharya, I salute. So that's the prayer here. So of course, like I was saying, his family tradition follows the philosophical branch of Vedanta taught by Ramanujacharya and hailing from the tradition of the 9th century Vaishnavite Saint Natamuni. They are a tradition of scholar practitioners and householder yogis. Krishnamacharya's family's branch of the Vedas was the Krishna Yajur Veda, which holds important Upanishads in regard to the study of yoga. This is such as the Katha Upanishad, the Svetasvatara Upanishad, the Taittiriya Upanishad, and various others. Later, Krishnamacharya sought out further education by traveling to various cities, notably to Varanasi, where he learned Ayurveda and attained 6 degrees in the orthodox philosophical systems of India. Krishnamacharya was interested to learn yoga from a practitioner, to which one of his professors told him of a Himalayan yogi living at the border of Tibet in the foothills of the Himalayas with his family, Sri Ramamohan Brahmachari. So the previous photograph is Krishnamacharya upon completion of his university studies. Afterward, it is said that Krishnamacharya wished to learn from a practitioner. So like I was saying, one of his professors informed him of this Himalayan yogi, Sri Ramamohan Brahmachari. And so he endeavored to find this yoga teacher, whom it is said he learned from for a period of 7 years. These are said to be the sandals of his acharyas. So during the 7 years that Krishnamacharya is said to have learned from his teacher, Sri Ramamohan Brahmachari, it's said that he learned Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. Of course, this is a text he had been studying since his childhood, under his study, the tutelage under his father. His father was the first teacher to instruct him on the Yoga Sutra itself. And along with his studies and degrees earned in the 6 classical philosophical systems through his travels, of which classical yoga of Patanjali is one of the 6 classical philosophical systems. What's pictured to the right here is also one of the important texts for one of the other sister philosophies, Sankhya philosophy. This is the pages from the Sankhya Karika. What else did Krishnamacharya learn from Sri Rama Mohan Brahmachari? He is said to have learned the breathing practice of the asanas in traditional Vinyasa Krama system, the mudras and pranayama. The therapeutic aspects of practice, as through Hatha teachings of Yoga Yajnavalkya, Hatha Pradipika, Gheranda Samhita, and Kurantaka. This is the Pune manuscript of a text called the Hatha Bhyasaparati by the author Kapala Kurantaka. And Krishnamacharya is said to have received from his teacher Sri Rama Mohan Brahmachari an album of drawings copied out by his teacher's daughter, with these remarkable drawings bearing remarkable similarities to the drawing style of the Sri Tattva Nidhi, compiled by the mid-19th century Maharaja of Mysore. So the Sri Tattva Nidhi is related to the earlier 18th century work, the Hatha Bhyasaparati of Kapala Kurantaka. Krishnamacharya is said to have learned the Yoga Kurunta, so there's speculation that perhaps these are related, the Hatha Bhyasaparati of Kapala Kurantaka and the supposed lost text called the Yoga Kurunta. So here's some folios from the album of drawings that Krishnamacharya received. Not all of these drawings have been made public, but these are a great many, and we can compare them to the pictorials in the illustrated manuscript of the Sri Tattva Nidhi. Here, with comparison also to pictures of Krishnamacharya's eldest son, D.K. Srinivasan, performing the asanas in question. Also, comparison to the illustrated Mysore manuscript of this Hatha Bhyasaparati of Kapala Kurantaka, the drawing style very similar to what is seen in the 19th century Sri Tattva Nidhi. So these are the Sri Tattva Nidhi drawings, but in the order retained in the earlier Hatha Bhyasaparati of Kapala Kurantaka, of which the Sri Tattva Nidhi asana section derives. They have a sequential nature in the order that they are proposed: supine group, prone group, the seated group, the standing group, the rope group, and then the final group is a category that is indicated for the purpose of piercing the sun and the moon. It's 112 asanas described in this Hathabhyasa Parati of Kapala Kurantaka, a remarkable text. Now, upon completing his studies, Krishnamacharya's teacher instructed him to return to Mysore to start a family and teach yoga to householders. And so Krishnamacharya returned to Mysore late 1920s and eventually gained the prestigious position of yoga teacher at the Jagan Mohan Palace under the patronage of the king of Mysore by 1930s. This is Sri Krishnaraja Wadayar IV. And this is photographs of the students, the young students at the Mysore Yoga Shala that Krishnamacharya was head of at the Mysore Palace and Jagan Mohan Palace. These are propaganda photographs where he assembled his young students into very fantastic asanas to capture the imagination of Krishnamacharya's fellow countrymen. In fact, there was an agenda of a long-held agenda of the Maharajas of Mysore to reintroduce Indian cultural traditions to the fellow countrymen. Because there was a systematic eradication and loss of some of the cultural traditions due to British occupation. So this was one such effort in trying to reintegrate indigenous cultural traditions, and also to strengthen the young through the practice building strength. And so it was here where Krishnamacharya taught Pattabhi Jois, BKS Iyengar, and Indra Devi. So at the time of the independence of India, late 1940s, power changed hands and funding to the Yogashala, if we look at the photos of the old Yogashala in Mysore, the funding to this yoga school of the Mysore Palace was cut. Krishnamacharya and his family was forced to relocate to Madras, Chennai by 1950s, where there was some promise of teaching opportunities for him. He would teach at the Vivekananda College and variously to private students. Here, an American, Libby Mattis, is pictured along with her teacher. Here, a French woman, Yvonne Millerand, is photographed with her teacher. Here, an industrialist from Chennai, Sri Krishna Das, is photographed along with his teacher. It is in this period where his son TKV Deshikachar did much of his principal learning, as well as his younger brother TK Sribashyam, and their little sister Shishubha Mohan Kumar. It is here as well where Krishnamacharya taught others such as Srivatsa Ramaswamy. And here is Ramaswamy with his teacher. And A.G. Mohan, pictured here alongside TKV Deshikachar, learning from the Acharya. Who also are long-term pupils of the professors, studying with him for some 20, 30 years even. So the professor Krishnamacharya died in 1989 after his 100th birthday celebrations. His legacy lives on in the various approaches that find their origin in his teaching his various pupils over the course of his life. Pupils whom would become yoga teachers themselves, transmitting parts of Krishnamacharya's teachings from the vast knowledge of the professors. Characteristic of the practice emphasized by Sri T. Krishnamacharya was a mindful, breath-centered practice. It was also taught to have a spiritual understanding, to practice in appreciating something greater than ourselves. So I'd like to also show some of these works by Krishnamacharya. So this is a 1934 work, published originally in the Kannada language. The Yoga Makaranda means the nectar of yoga. There was initially a translation, an English translation that came out later, but it was based on the 1938 Tamil translation. And after that, there was a sort of an official translation published by Kaustubh Deshikachar under his media house, his publishing house, Media Garuda. And that was based more so on the original 1934 Kannada language publication from 1934. There's also the Yoga Asanagalu by Krishnamacharya, as yet to be officially published in English translation. But there is an English translation that's floating around that some folks worked on, and they posted to the internet. Very interesting book. There's also a text that Krishnamacharya is said to have transmitted. Well, he did transmit. It's called the Yoga Rahasya. He referred to it as the Yoga Rahasya, and Krishnamacharya attributed it to his ancestor Nata Muni. Of course, it's broadly considered to be a work by Krishnamacharya himself. He is said to have received it under mysterious circumstances in a state of trance, meditative concentration, samadhi in a word, where he was on pilgrimage, seeking out connection to his roots through this 9th century Vaishnavite saint Nata Muni. So he is said to have fell into a trance on temple grounds, after which he came to, and he is said to have had the knowledge of this text by the name of the Yoga Rahasya, which is an amalgamation of yoga teachings as according to his family's tradition. It deals with the subject of individual application, yoga according to 3 stages of life, yoga for women, of yoga of devotion. It's a very interesting text. It's broadly considered a work by Krishnamacharya that he is said to have received under mysterious circumstances. And he himself would bow in honor to his ancestor Nata Muni in the context of this text that he was transmitting, Krishnamacharya was transmitting. Otherwise, there's a book that was floating around that is unclear whether or not this is actually composed by Krishnamacharya. Nevertheless, it's been attributed to Krishnamacharya himself. It's called Salutation to the Teacher and the Eternal One. Some have disputed the fact that it being a work by Krishnamacharya himself. Nevertheless, the contents of this work bear remarkable resemblance to the kinds of teachings you would expect from the perspective of Krishnamacharya teachings, particularly from Deshikachar teachings, A.G. Mohan, Srivatsa Ramaswamy, etc. A.G. Mohan has speculated that this was meant to be considered the Yoga Makaranda Part 2. So if we look at the first text presented, this is Yoga Makaranda, which incidentally ends with this phrase, end of Part 1. There were hopes of publishing a series of books to come, covering more different topics, getting more into more detail about pranayama, into antaranga sadhana. But that never came to fruition, because by 1940 the king passed, and then the power shifted hands, and the person that was responsible for the Mysore Yogashala was less interested in such propaganda projects, and then by Indian independence, late 1940s, the funding altogether dropped for the Yogashala, like I said. So Krishnamacharya was forced to relocate to Madras, Chennai. So A.G. Mohan has speculated that this is meant to be considered Yoga Makaranda Part 2. Whether this is perhaps more aligned to being lecture notes that someone had basically transcribed, perhaps it is A.G. Mohan, because he's the one that had been quite vocal about this up until recently, referring to it as the Yoga Makaranda Part 2. Maybe it was lecture notes from A.G. Mohan. Nevertheless, whether it be verbatim or as close to verbatim to what Krishnamacharya may have said in lessons, it does reveal itself to be very much in the perspective of Krishnamacharya lineage teachings, as one would expect, as through Deshikachar, A.G. Mohan, and Srivatsa Ramaswamy, etc. Speaking of lecture notes, A.G. Mohan and his son Ganesh Mohan did publish recently a book called Krishnamacharya in His Own Words, which are a series of verbatim lecture notes, verbatim lessons that Mohan transcribed in his notes from Krishnamacharya's lectures. Very insightful. It's not a direct work from Krishnamacharya, but it's a very worthwhile work to consider, that A.G. Mohan graciously published, with very beautiful insights from the professor, Krishnamacharya. So that's why I may speculate that perhaps the Salutation to the Teacher and the Eternal One may be considered along these lines. Otherwise, there's the Yoga Vali, a Yoga Sutra commentary by the professor Krishnamacharya that has unfortunately yet to be translated into English in any significant way. Although there's maybe fragments of it, of the English translation, that's floating around. Paul Harvey has published some fragments that he learned through his teacher T.K.V. Deshikachar. So it's supposed to be an important work that the grandson Kaustubh Deshikachar is said to be working on an official English translation release, publishing of the official English translation, though it hasn't been announced when that may come to fruition. The same goes with the Yogasana Galu mentioned earlier. And in any case, there's also short poetic works relevant to yoga students, like this poetic work Krishnamacharya composed, the Yoganjali Saram. It's the essence of yoga, bowing to the essence of yoga. Very insightful, short poetic work, concise. There's also the Dhyana Malika, this other short poetic work by Krishnamacharya that looks at meditation, the Antaranga Sadhana. Another document that's worthwhile to read, to receive insights from the Acharya, is Yogacharya Krishnamacharya, the Purnacharya. It's edited by Mala Srivatsan. This contains the first biography of Krishnamacharya with a Q&A with the professor. So this Q&A can be considered direct verbatim transcription of the professor's words in conference with his students. It's also providing a lot of insight from the perspective of Krishnamacharya teachings. And with that, I'd like to close. Hopefully that wasn't too long. I thank you for watching. And I humbly bow to the Acharya, Sri Tirumalai Krishnamacharya. And we'll see you next time, and hope you enjoyed.